Welcome, everyone, to our Neptune in Aries webinar. I'm calling it an update because here's my housekeeping slide. About 2 years ago, I spoke to the Manitoba Astrological Association. And so I actually did webinars on all four of these ingresses, which are still available on our website if you would like to look at them. So this is going to be an expanded version on the one for Neptune in Aries for you. All right. And I'll just go back one more time. If you're new to Evolutionary Astrology Network, here are the links to the main areas of our website. And Leroy, Media Monk, and I do new and full moon audio podcasts if you'd like to go and listen to those on a regular basis. Now, one of the things that I said before the recording that I'm going to repeat for you right now is that I have a tendency to be a PowerPoint queen. I have a lot of slides. However, the PDF of all of these slides will be on our YouTube channel when we post this as a recording. In the description of Neptune in Aries, you will find that link to the PDF that you can download, print out, whatever you want to do in helping you through the next 14 years of Neptune in Aries. As you can see from your screen here, 4 years, 23, 24, 25, 26. The outermost planets, and I'm including Chiron here, are changing signs. This is something that is actually quite rare as the planets move around their cycles together. And so I've been saying for a while that this decade is going to bring a lot of excitement, a lot of activity, a lot of upsets. Take a deep breath. Tonight, we're going to focus on Neptune in Aries. We will also look at a few of these aspects that are going to come up as well. I'll have more on these for you in a little bit longer, a little more detail. Okay. So Neptune in Aries, basically the world and all of us countries and all of us individuals, we have to choose whether we're going to figure out how to get along or if our buttons get pushed and we get into our insecurities, where that Aries defensiveness and fight to the finish will come out. I'm calling it righteous anger. There's all kinds of phrases popping up from astrologers across the internet on this. But if you just want to take a little look around you with what's going on in the world right now, you can see, for instance, in the United States, there are a lot of people upset at what Elon Musk, and I deliberately mispronounce it, what Elon Musk and his doggy is doing to all of these federal agencies in the name of cutting waste and fraud. Well, about 3/4 of our annual budget comes from the military, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So they cannot find $2 trillion of waste in a $6 trillion annual budget. Stay tuned. There'll be more of this going on that will have probably many people rising up. And I'm hoping that we will see the masses say, wait a minute, I'd like billionaires to pay their fair share of taxes so that I don't have to get angry, and maybe really initiate some of this progress with our social support systems. Stay tuned. I'll talk on it some more. Just in case there's anybody who is new to evolutionary astrology, Jeffrey Wolf Green method. Observe, correlate, observe, correlate. A chart will not tell you the evolutionary state of consciousness, and it's not better than, less than. It's expanding awareness. Consensus, approximately 7 out of 10 souls. can't step outside the space-time they're born into. If somebody says astrology is the work of the devil, their pastor, their guru, whatever, they take it in wholeheartedly. Approximately 20% are individuating. I'm going to decide for myself what I think of astrology. And then we have about 10%, 1 out of 10 people that are in that spirituated state of consciousness. They have the awareness to step outside the boundaries of physical space time and understand universal, timeless spiritual principles. You can see on your screen, consensus tends to be Saturnian, Capricorn. Individuated tends to be Uranus, Aquarius. Spirituated tends to be Neptunian and Pisces. Now, again, that's loose archetypical descriptions. It does not mean everybody who has Sun in Pisces is spirituated. No, 7 out of 10 people with Sun in Pisces could easily be in consensus state of consciousness and, subscribing to their religion wherever they live on the planet. Here's another slide I just want to show you, just so that you're aware of this as I speak through these slides. Here is how it looks like with the bubbles in their loose proximity of the masses. And as you can see right here on your screen, what changed is this is the majority. This is the majority, consensus consciousness. And these are the people who decide our laws. These are the people who make the decisions from the most minute level to a national level to a global level. This is true regardless of what continent souls live on, regardless of what countries they belong to or live in. And as you can see, if you are a United States citizen, there's a lot of chaos going on right now with our consensus consciousness, just wanting to disrupt everything. What will we be able to do through Neptune in Aries in really initiating change that maybe works for all of us instead of just the top 1% of our citizens? Here are your physical dates for Neptune in Aries. It's going to go in for 7 months here, as you see. Dip back in for another, 3 months back into Pisces, and then we're going to have 12 years in Aries. Neptune has approximately 165 years around the zodiac and is pretty evenly balanced with about 14 years in each sign of the zodiac. So what are we going to have happen with Neptune in Aries? We got a brand new 165-year cycle starting around the zodiac. Religious and its spiritual upheavals will be initiated. Just think back on the last 14 years of Neptune in Pisces. How many people have been disillusioned with religion and now call themselves nuns or non-affiliated because they're starting to recognize some of that consensus dogma and go, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. It's not logic. And so there's been a lot of exposure in the last 14 years of Neptune's transit to how many religions across the planet, Eastern and Western, are so entrenched in their dogmas that they just can't even keep up with this modern world. Now, I will say that most of your major religions, most of your major religions, there are 3,500 religions categorized on the planet today. Most of your major religions all have that mystical side or that 1 out of 10 spirituated consciousness where they understand deep principles underneath some of the dogmas. But we can have religious dogma so distorted that, again, as Neptune moves into Aries, we're going to have those types of distortions exposed. Consensus consciousness is going to want to cling to it. You see it happening right now. You see the rising of, specifically here in the United States, if you are evangelical Christian, you have perhaps bought into mega, and you have almost, your religion has become a national cultism. That's Neptune in Pisces being distorted from a rapidly changing world and looking for their savior in the name of a guy with dyed orange hair and a red mega cap. So, Neptune in Aries again will expose these distortions. I think that perhaps most of consensus consciousness, or at least enough of consensus consciousness, will join in with individuated and spirituated states of consciousness and say, we'd like to evolve forward a little bit to help with survival on planet Earth. By the way, Neptune, Pisces, 12th house, the 12th archetype, contains all 11 archetypes that came before it. That's why Neptune's the totality of consciousness, unconsciousness. And so this is this tapping in that Neptune will do, and we will go, I can't buy into that anymore. It doesn't make sense, especially with the logic of Pluto and Aquarius. And as Neptune moves in, or excuse me, Uranus moves into Gemini come this summer, that logic will continue to expand for us along with information. I'll have more on this too, but it's going to relate to spirituality, technology. Neptune and Uranus are really going to be doing a dance here over the next few years, not to mention putting in Pluto in Aquarius as well. So again, we're starting a brand new major search, okay, of how to make sense of our life and how to make sense of our world. Because Neptune's going into Aries, Aries is the first archetype with Mars and first house. It can bring out a bit of frustration and anger if change isn't happening fast enough, or if change is going in a direction that we don't perceive to be healthy for us or highest and best for all concerned. So, told you that the Neptune archetype explains the totality of existence on Earth, on other planes of existence, but in general, our spiritual principles, EA will sometimes call it natural law. This whole concept of natural spiritual principles, it comes down to two types of belief systems, as you see on your screen. They're either based upon inclusive principles of giving, sharing, and including, or they're based upon exclusive principles of taking, hoarding, and excluding. Now, most of your organized religions are based upon a mixture of the two. We have Jesus, the evolved human being who walked the earth, saying, take care of the poor. That is inclusive principles. However, what we find is most of our consensus religion, at least much of it here in the United States, we're not practicing that. So again, there can be a mixture of those two. And evolutionary astrology has this concept that you can suppress the truth. You can distort the truth, and truth is always observed, correlate through nature. But you cannot destroy truth. And so sooner or later, natural law, universal truths, Gaia, climate change will have the last word. So Neptune is, again, all forms of consciousness, totality of existence. And all forms of consciousness desire to survive and rebirth. And this is jump started as Neptune goes into Aries. It's hard to deny this changing climate, and less souls are actually denying it. And as we look at these rapid changes that are taking place in our world with other species, it is jumpstarting Neptune in Aries, this desire to survive. Any species is wanting to survive. The earth is wanting to survive, and it will do whatever it needs to do through the climate, through our weather, through water, through air, through fire, through the physical earth, the four elements. It will do whatever it needs to do to reestablish balance, regardless of us humans. So, just as you can see on your screen here, that totality of consciousness can be human, broken down into universal, racial, natural, national. It can be non-human. And again, it's the earth, climate, and all of its rawness. So, how are we going to be a part of this rebirth, of this desire to survive, not only as humans, but desire to survive in some type of harmony with our environment, wherever it is we may live? Oh, I can't remember the statistic. It's out of my excuse my burp. It's out of my head right now. I want to say something like 40% of the planet's population live in coastal cities. 40% of the planet's population live in coastal cities. As we go through the next 14 years of Neptune in Aries, then we have these three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and fire and air. And we have more air events, more wildfires. We have more melting of the glaciers and ice caps, and the water rises. More and more people have to move inland. They have to move into other areas. This concept of immigration is not going to stop, no matter how much we try to do a bully pulpit here in the United States. People will still want to go in places where they feel safer. Stay tuned. Neptune in Aries is going to accelerate it. But it also, working with Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini, it will also bring us opportunities to renew, to make technology work for all of us if we have enough collective consciousness where we choose to do that. Stay tuned. We're going to see how it unfolds. Now, one of the things that comes from Neptune, Pisces, 12th house is this whole concept from your major religions of some perfect God that exists out there, old man, white beard on a cloud. And as we can easily observe within ourselves, our imperfectness as humans. And what it does is it creates what EA calls this conditioned guilt. And it's been so conditioned for so long, we almost don't even recognize it anymore. Well, there's two responses to this sense of guilt. The atonement side, which means we're the victim or masochist. I must suffer. I have to hurt. Somehow I deserve this. Or it is the anger side, which is the victor and the sadist, and I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. Well, Neptune in Aries is going to give us an opportunity to realize the fallacy of this. Universal source is everywhere. It is beyond a gender. And we know it out there to the degree we know it in here. And the real biggie is that universal source is evolving force. Why would something perfect create this mess? And so the path to evolving, the path to perfecting is acting upon our evolving beliefs. And so one of the things that Neptune is going to do in Aries, it's going to expose this conditioned guilt, and there will be some righteous anger exposed with that, where it's like, wait a minute, this is BS. It just doesn't make sense. I want to search for something else that makes sense to me of what this is all about here on planet Earth and what my role in planet Earth is actually about. So it will accelerate recognizing that this path to evolving, to expanding in consciousness, to perfection, as religion says, it's again acting upon our evolving beliefs. Now, I said it before, no religious affiliation is probably going to continue to rise. Again, Neptune between the sciences of Pluto, Aquarius, Uranus, Gemini. Neptune's been dissolving these old beliefs. What are we going to fill the void up with? What are we going to fill the space up with? Now, because Neptune is that desire to know source, to merge with whatever we consider source energy. Regardless of what sign Neptune moves through, it is still all about transcendence. In other words, there's more to us than just this physical body. There's more to it than our computers and my desk. There's more to the universe than just this physical world. And Neptune is always searching for it. And as it starts a new zodiacal cycle, it's starting a huge, again, 165-year cycle of what's this all about? So I've been saying with Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune moving into Aries, we could see a metaphysical renaissance because people are searching. And for those of us who are astrologers, and in my world, evolutionary astrologers or spiritual psychological astrologers, we can be one of those knowledge based voices to help people make sense of their world, to help people re spiritualize. However, it can also create, especially in consensus consciousness, extreme frustrations and actions in anger, as that Aries' need for freedom clashes with those larger forces of power out there, universal source, or even larger forces of power in a country, so to speak, or a parent that don't let us have all that freedom. In other words, the polarity of Aries is Libra. Aries wants to act and it runs into Libra that gives it feedback. Action, reaction, action, reaction. Cardinal modality, Aries, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so we're going to want to move, grow, figure things out, and we're going to run up against those time periods where we get turned inward to figure out what it's all about. So just recognize you yourself personally and everyone else on the planet and all of us collectively, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It could be a way, if you live in the US, it could be a way to look at things because as we watch Elon Musk come through and, you know, what are they saying? Taking the sledgehammer instead of the scalpel to all of these government agencies and, destroying things. That 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you already seen them rehire people. You're going to find the backlash coming from the public when they realize how many people can't get Medicaid anymore. You're going to see that backlash come when they realize that they're shutting down the phone lines and how many seniors rely on that. My mother is one of them. She may have a smartphone, but she has no idea how to get on the internet. She has no email. So we will find that backlash. And if we can broaden our understanding of that, we try this, it doesn't work. Oh, there was something about this that did work pretty good. Not saying that we cannot modernize a lot of our computer systems with our government agencies. We can. Part of the reason why um, Elon Musk went after the FAA was because Verizon was given a 10 or 12-year contract to upgrade all their computer systems. Elon Musk lost out on that contract. So it pissed him off, and that's why he's stirring the pot. If there's an agency that he is trying to destroy, it's because they were investigating him. I think there's like, what did I read? Like 30 different investigative lawsuits, not lawsuits, 30 different investigations that were going on from federal agencies last year in 2024. So Elon's out for revenge. Let's see how that works out for him. He may get his comeuppance. One of the things that we really have to be careful of when we run into this Neptune Aries violence is this whole issue in the United States of gun control. If you can't read this on your screen, Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Sweden, UK, United States, you can just see visually what's going on. Now, the Supreme Court in the US today did uphold that those ghost guns where you order them through the internet and you put them together, they still have to have background checks and they still have to be registered. So they did stand up for something. As Saturn goes into Aries, which it will do May 24th for 2.5 years, retrograde dip back to Pisces, we can find that there is a possibility of a strong increase in violence with Neptune in Aries all over the world. Typically in the US, it'd be gun control. Right now, it's just people pissed off at Elon Musk and taking it out on Tesla trucks. But there'll be different ways that it will manifest. So stay tuned. Will we start to see a huge Neptunian shift in ethics and morality around gun control? Stay tuned. We'll find out. So I want to talk a little bit about one of the basics of Neptune as an archetype. And again, this is true in any of the signs. Any evolutionary state of consciousness desires to dissolve whatever is preventing a connection to universal source on any level. So Neptune's always how we're trying to return to source, merge with source, and do it through our space-time continuum because we are in this temple of our soul, the physical body. But how that dissolving of desires that no longer serve us, what we broadly call separating desires, it operates through a cycle of confusion, which means that things disintegrate. That Neptunian, it just dissolves into the water of nothingness. It just, all of a sudden there's nothing there. It will create alienation. It will create depression, disorientation. What will happen with Neptune in Aries is we're going to resist it. We can hold on to things that no longer serve our soul. And to the degree that we want to resist what the universe is trying to say, that doesn't work in your life anymore. To the degree that we resist it, then Pluto and Uranus are going to come in with their sextiles to Neptune and blow it up. So whatever you can do to just work with Neptune when you feel that disillusionment or dissolving going on. It turns us inward. Why is this happening? What does this mean? What is it in my life that no longer is working for me? Can I release it? Can I let it go? And so then what happens is nothing replaces it on an immediate level. Neptune leaves us in a void of existence. And what that void is doing is teaching us that universal source is in charge. And so Neptune, Pisces, 12th house, polarity, Mercury, Virgo, 6th. We have to still put one foot in front of another, as I say. We still have to brush our teeth. We still have to eat. We still have to go to work to pay the mortgage. We still have to exist through that void. But can we ask, what am I to learn here, Source? And Neptune in Aries can help point something out. And so sooner or later, then we flip into what's called the cycle of clarity. All of a sudden, life is magical again. It makes sense. Neptune in Aries is like, let's go, 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 go. This is what I want to do. This is my new direction. This is what excites me in life. And by the way, this can happen in multiple ways. Consensus distortion, Neptune in Aries, I'm going to build a bomb. But for most of us, we go through these cycles of confusion and clarity to let go of the past and move forward into our future, to evolve on our own personal level, however that's meant to happen for us. And in the broad scale of things, it's teaching us that our ego isn't in control. Ego must merge with individual soul, and our individual soul isn't in control. The individual soul must merge with universal soul. Ooh, the big kahuna's in charge. How do I align my will with divine will? And so Neptune in Aries is going to really spark that. So again, when the cycle of confusion comes along, work with it as best as you can. What am I supposed to know? What am I supposed to release? What are you trying to tell me? And then open yourself up to whatever is your next step of growth. And you can jumpstart it with Neptune in Aries. So, Aries is an archetype that has a tendency to vacillate between feeling superhuman, I'm Superman, Superwoman, I got it, I can do this, watch me go. And oh my God, I can't, I'm just so insecure. I can't do that. I can't get up there and talk in front of people. And so we go back and forth between this full of confidence and full of insecurity. That is that cardinal modality in Aries of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. All right. It's also teaching us that we can't keep going and expanding Aries forever. We've got to have, again, that Libra feedback. We've got to have that reaction from the universe that tells us yes, no, change it a little bit and move in this direction, or that's not going to work. I guess we got to start over, Aries. Aries desires, you got 5 of them. You act upon 3 of them. 2 of them might go forward, and then sooner or later, oh, this is the one I'm supposed to be working with. That's Aries energy. And so sometimes it can be a little tough for Neptune in Aries, for Neptune, nebulous Neptune, working with that energy of Aries. Confusion, clarity, confusion, clarity. What would you have me know? That's how you can then go through this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then again, with Aries, you have to be somewhat comfortable with chaos because it's not knowing. Maybe spirituated states of consciousness can go, ooh, if I take those steps, I don't think I'm going to like where that turns out. And they can maybe recognize it a little easier. But many times for all of us, We just need that freedom to try. We need that freedom to explore. And how well can we allow others that same freedom? I have this phrase, your freedom ends at my nose. My freedom ends at your nose. And that's how we have those Neptunian healthy boundaries, and that's how we can learn them through Aries energy that just wants to go, 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 go. Neptune rules the dream world, and Neptune will dream in all 12 signs. In EA, we say there's three kinds of dreams. There's the junk dreams. They are by far the most common. We are so bombarded in consciousness throughout our day that sometimes we need the dream world to release it. How many of you watch a movie before bed and you dream it? Your whole soul is trying to make sense of that. Leroy has learned that if we watch TV at the end of the evening, it has to be something that's light. It can't be intense because it just doesn't work for my consciousness. Past life dreams, we have a disorientation when we wake up. We feel like we've sometimes down a long tunnel, you feel like you've been somewhere else. And it's like, oh gosh, oh yeah, I'm in this body, this life. What can you make sense of in regards to those dreams when they happen? Is it something relating to the current life that you may be recycling or repeating that you want to figure out? And then we have superconscious dreams, which are messages from other sources, other beings, other, energies in the solar system, outside the solar system, that really are giving you some type of message about yourself, depending on your soul state of consciousness, messages about the planet. So, one of the things about the archetype of Neptune as well is this whole concept of judgments. And so that must evolve with Neptune in Aries. And in EA, we talk about actions based upon a sense or standard of right, wrong conduct. Are they the religious ones that say you can't do this and you can't do that? Are they naturally based ones that say, it isn't really nice to be mean or abusive of children? Don't need a book to tell you that. So we can be reviewing this whole sense of judgment and what's a right, wrong conduct for us. And one of the things that we also say, because this is an imperfect world in this physical realm, judge the intent, not the outcome. Think of it as wanting to play tennis. How many of you can be an expert at playing tennis with 3 lessons? Nope. Try, 3 decades and you might be an expert. But you made the sincere effort. You made the sincere effort. You get a little better. You get a little better. That's with anything that we are evolving forward with as souls. And so, hey, I like to say judge less, discern more. And as I said down here, Neptune in Aries, there's a lot of war that gets started with Neptune in Aries. I'll show you some slides on that in just a little bit. But as our consensus religions feel real threatened, they can be fighting back on some extreme levels. Our legislature tried to, we're a small state, 900,000 people. We only meet 2 months out of the year. They tried to pass a law that the 10 Commandments had to be taught in our schools. It didn't make it, thank goodness. Just a little example for you. Neptune rules the feet, immune system, endocrine system, lymphatic system. It rules the pineal gland, which makes our melatonin, which is what allows us to sleep. It rules that etheric body just beyond the physical. And so, survival of the species in general depends upon evolving our immune systems. That's why we have two genders for almost any species, because when you have one gender and you replicate, the immune system's static. And so, again, as I said before, Neptune in Aries is going to have all species fighting to survive. Who will and who doesn't? Aries rules the head. Aries to Pisces, head to toe. Muscles, ligaments, red blood cells, adrenal glands, testosterone men, progesterone women. So, all species with this Aries again, we're going to find new ways to survive and evolve our immune systems. Just stay tuned with what we will go through with health and wellness and with these three planets, the three outer planets, initiating into new signs. And so, what I want you to remember with this, though, is this Neptune immune system in Aries survival that includes viruses, bacteria, and fungi. They can all go through an acceleration or speeding up of their mutations because their consciousness wants to survive. Whew, look at what that can do for us. It's always important for us to do whatever we can with taking care of our immune system. Right down here, these are the herbs that I am familiar with for evolving our immune system. I have taken astragalus root for 30 plus years. I have taken, you got to play with the ginsengs. There's a ginseng to every continent. I can't do South American ginseng, maca. Must have a past life with that. But I can do the other ginsengs. I have a 40-foot row of elderberries outside my house. So, and I'm a firm believer in Mother Nature's foods. I play neutral with the vaccine world. I do kind of, look back on polio, and I look back on the measles and how we had eradicated polio. We had pretty much eradicated measles in the US, not having a case for like, I don't know, a couple of decades. And stay tuned, because if we're not all really working to improve our immune systems, this is going to be a very controversial thing with these three outer planets changing signs throughout this decade. And I think we are going to see some epidemics that are preventable, but for whatever reasons, our collective human consciousness is, not wanting to do what works for most of us. I'm not a person who goes out and gets vaccinated, but I also can understand why some people and why the masses choose to. I am involved with an alternative program. This is my other work that I do. Don't advertise it a lot. My friend, Miss Leah, if you are on tomorrow, March 27th, I will be 25 years on the AIM program of energetic balancing. I love it. I have 500,000 plus healing frequencies imparted to me via a photograph 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24/7, 365. And every time there's a mutation of a COVID imbalance or a measles imbalance and a new frequencies added to our program, they're added weekly. I can immediately pick up on that frequency if I need it. You want more information, you can get it. We're going to see things. Here's the woolly mice, if you haven't caught that in the news. They took the DNA from woolly mammoths and put them in mice. Whew, talk about Neptune in Aries, as well as these outer planets just exploding with technology. And how does ethics keep up with technology? Stay tuned with this. Just a couple things on the Libra polarity. Neptune's retrograde 5 months of the year, or 44% of the time. And the intent when Neptune in Aries goes retrograde with the Libra polarity is to honor the divine in the other. All species, expand that out there. Libra is that psychology of listening to another versus the Aries interruptions that always need to convince and convert somebody else. It's also going to mean listening to our inner higher power. And it's going to ask us to be finding new ways of equality in all our relationships. Neptune in Aries, I'm right, you're wrong. And how are we going to figure out how to get along in more equal and fair ways? Stay tuned. It's also going to teach us how to slow down sometimes. Aries, again, go, 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 go. That Libra is when to act and when not to act. That's that polarity of Libra feeding back to us. Oh, it's time to rest. It's time to pause and do a Neptunian pondering. And then that again will also include when to give and when not to give. When not giving is greater giving with that Libra polarity. So relationships are up for renegotiation on all levels, from the most personal to the most mundane and global. Not so kind of depressing and scary if you watch what's happening in the United States right now in our relationships with other countries. Stay tuned. It's going to be very hard to repair the damage that is being done. Here's some big cycles that are being stirred up. But it is about reestablishing fairness and equality. If you have followed my webinars, I am not a friend of Donald Trump's. That's how I'll say it. I think he is not that smart. He's a transactional guy who can't think beyond the end of his nose. So Neptune in Aries, Libra polarity, gonna give him some feedback from the universe. Stay tuned. So again, with this whole Neptunian judgment thing, how well can we make an effort to understand someone else? Oh, there's a phrase for that, seek to understand rather than be understood. I'm not saying you do the Neptunian, no boundaries, let somebody crawl all over you. But how well can we learn and search for ways to get along in this rapidly changing world? Neptune in Aries is going to easily create stress and burnout. And so that sensitivity of Neptune is just like even more heightened, so to speak. By the way, I've been saying this to people. If you really feel that you've got an excess of stress going on, the Uranus herb, which rules co-rules the nervous system. The Uranus herb is Fo-Ti root, F-O-Ti root. It is an oriental longevity herb, but it balances the brain and it calms down the synapse firing, allows us to think better. And it also it's an adaptogenic. That means it calms down a hyper, it enhances a hypo. And it allows a balancing of all the male and female hormones. ashwagandha, which is an immune herb. The reason ashwagandha is known as an immune herb is because it helps reduce stress, which calms us down, which helps reestablish the immune system. So, when Neptune's retrograde, we really want to make that effort to breathe, to balance, to rest. And when we do that, then we can, again, relationships connect with source better. And so there also is with any planetary retrograde, is throwing off consensus. Any planetary retrograde, it's throwing off conditioning factors relative to that planetary archetype. So Neptune retrograde is throwing off old desires. It's the last archetype. What do we need to let go of for an Aries rebirth? Which, by the way, this has been heightened a little bit with the Venus and Mercury retrogrades in Aries and Pisces. Go to our YouTube channel, Evolutionary Astronet, that was on that housekeeping slide, if you want to get a little review there and more dates on those. But that Neptune retrograde, it really is to throw off old desires, but it's to throw off whatever resistance we have to merging with source energy. And again, it's not going, Jeffrey Green would say that the spiritualization path, it's not the monastery or the convent. He called it the path of the householder. It means it's living as a human being, engaging in relationships, having a job, making babies, taking care of the elderly, working in the real world day to day. That is that evolutionary path. And so, how do we take our day to day life and all of these relationships we have, and how do we make them spiritualize? How do we find the divine with another, holding healthy boundaries, intensified during that 45% of the time that Neptune's retrograde? All right, moving forward, we're going to look at, first of all, the last time Neptune was in Aries. I only went back one cycle here, and you can see the dates on your screen, the early 1860s to the middle of the 1870s. And guess what? This here, yeah, there's a fair amount of astrologers that know this, but just in case you don't, the last time Neptune was in Aries was the USA Civil War. And oh, by the way, Uranus was in Gemini at the same time we had the Civil War. We actually go back two cycles in the middle 1800s with Uranus in Gemini. But this is a mind-blowing fact. And if I say anything, I'm going to say pray for peace, pray for peace, pray for peace. Just really, and you know, I'm going to give my mother-in-law some credit here. Bless her soul. She did pass to non-physical this last winter. But she was fond of saying, I was taught that I needed to pray for our leader, our president, whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. I was taught that I needed to pray that he would do the highest and best for all concerned. Ah, I had to practice that one myself. But that is part of this whole pray for peace, because these three outer planets changing signs can really, really, really stir things up. Those 600,000 deaths of the Civil War were more than all of our wars combined up until the Korean War. Doesn't include Vietnam, doesn't include Iraq. But Neptune in Aries, we abolished slavery. And that was one of those steps forward. But we also assassinated Aries, our forward looking president. By the way, there are those in the world of evolutionary astrology who feel that Barack Obama was a reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln. You can go study their charts for yourself and see what you think. Just listed a couple of things, oil and gas are co-ruled Neptune, Pluto. We put the first transatlantic underground cable, Neptune. Neptune rules all the oceans. Alfred Nobel, who created the Nobel Prizes, patented dynamite. Canada got freedom, independence from Britain. Oh, you notice what Donald Trump is doing with Canada right now? Which, by the way, if Canada was ever interested, um, I would be willing to take 14 more states. Not one, 14. Because, Canadians are a lot more sensible, and for the most part, they're a lot more progressive than the US. So here's going to be Canada's Neptune return in case you were interested. The Suez Canal, if you're not familiar with that, that's a canal over in the Middle East, between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and I can't remember the other side, but that canal is the short stop from East Asia, India, over to Europe. It's the fast way across to the Atlantic from that side of the world. Oh, if you've been following the news and our media heads of state, trying to think how to have a nice neutral word or phrase. The Atlantic magazine, I've subscribed to it forever. They published an article where, we used unsecure software called Signal to, plan the bombing of the Houthis, which are the so-called pirates that have been, capturing all the big carrier ships that go up and down the Suez Canal. I thought that was kind of interesting that was done or finished. Neptune in Aries, a short spot through the sea. And here we are, another Neptune in Aries cycle later, and it's cycling back around. Stay tuned. We'll see how that works out. We had the 15th Amendment. The right to vote shall not be denied by race. I included these three because they happen so close together. 76, 77, 79. This is when Neptune actually went into Taurus. However, can you imagine what Bell and Edison were doing through Neptune in Aries, trying to figure out the telephone, trying to figure out light bulbs? All that work was done through Neptune in Aries, and then it went into Taurus. I got it. They finally got it. Probably one of the biggest things about the last time Neptune was in Aries was all the imperialism. That time period was known for Europe and the US. The US, we expanded west. I live very close to the Battle of Little Bighorn, where the Northern Indian tribes actually, beat George Custer. But we have all of these European countries that were going all over the west of the world trying to secure their own empires. It was a very imperialistic time period for the planet. And at that time, what we would say would be our more developed countries. Stay tuned. We'll see what consensus consciousness wants to do moving forward through this Neptune in Aries. Here's your dates again. So as we look forward, here's the first chart. I only did that. We're recording this March 26th. We have a North Node solar eclipse at 9 Aries on the 29th, which is the day before Neptune goes into Aries on March 30th. Just like the Venus and Mercury retrograde interior conjunctions to the sun, all the charts right now have a plethora or stellium of planets in Pisces and in Aries. And so we're going back and forth between Piscean surrender, victimization versus Aries initiations and uprisings. The world's belief systems are undergoing death and rebirth in all areas. Trade wars, alliances that we've had between democracies and autocracies, and Donald Trump has stirred them all up. And he is aligning himself more with the Putins and the what's his name, Jinping, whatever is China, aligning himself more with autocracies than with he really is with saving democracy. I go back and forth. I sometimes I wake up in the morning and if I let myself read articles in the news, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is just going to, you know, become the imperialist dictator in the United States. And then other times I go, oh, okay, the masses are going to rise up, Neptune in Aries. I got my own 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. I'm beginning to see more and more little inklings of hope that the United States, even though we don't have social support systems that take care of the least of us as well as Scandinavian countries do, we still have enough social support systems in this country that I really don't think the masses will let it all be destroyed. Stay tuned. But again, this ingress chart really shows us this back and forth energy between yesterday and tomorrow, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. Now, if you're not familiar with the July 4th chart that I used, I switched over to this one about 3-4 years ago. Basically in 89, Library of Congress released newly discovered old letters of Benjamin Franklin and others quoting the signing of the Declaration of Independence between 9 and 11. Here's the article encapsulating the research, synopsizing, whatever. All of an article about Michael Mankesy, an astrologer, and all his research on different time periods between the 9 and 11. I think this fits for me with the US being a 5th house Pluto, with all of its exceptionalism and egotisticalism. And, you know, sleight of hand, are you an enemy or a friend? We'll treat you as one, then we'll treat you as another. You know, that instinctive need to have all the materialism we can have. Stay tuned. We can, you know, I'm not here to discuss that. I just want you to show you where I'm coming from. And so what I see happening with the USA chart is, of course, when Neptune was in Pisces, we were just coming off of it, making 5 last quarter squares to Mars, and then making the oppositions to Neptune. You can see the dates over here on your screen. What we have going on is the Aries planets triggering squares with the Cancer planets. And one of the things to realize about cardinal modalities, cardinal initiates, cardinal's the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. And so when we have these squares in Aries, Cancer, especially, it can trigger insecurity. You know that I can do it, and then, oh, I don't know if I can. And so that goes back and forth for us as a country. And so, again, how imperialistic will we go? How will the rest of the world fight back? Will we take actions that hurt us on economic levels? Donald Trump announced more tariffs today that he's going to follow through on. And every single economist in the United States, conservative and liberal, they all say tariffs are taxes on the people, and it's taxes on the poor and the middle class, those who can least afford to pay it. I expect, if not stagnation, even perhaps recession, if Donald Trump is that stubborn. I'll show you his chart next. How many of you are familiar with the BRICS? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They formed about a decade or so ago, and many of these countries are involved to a certain degree in what we call the public banking movement, which I absolutely love. I do have a slide for you on it. The BRICS countries, South Africa is the latest to join. And there's a lot of smaller other countries, but those are the most major ones. They have been in conversations for a while. And let's see what Neptune in Aries does. Let's see what Donald Trump's actions bring about. They have been talking about creating their own currency. And then with that currency, trading amongst themselves versus the US dollar. And I don't know if you are familiar with this, but there are many countries who hold bonds of the US, and not enough time to go into it. By the way, if you are interested in this whole banking and economic situation, on our YouTube channel, I have a free video that's called the Public Banking Movement. The Public Banking Movement. You can also go to publicbankinginstitute.org. Publicbankinginstitute.org. If these countries create their own currency, think how all the European countries created the euro to trade amongst themselves. However, they still go and trade internationally via the dollar. This could get shook up. And if it does, it will decimate us financially. It will create a deep recession. From my perspective, it can also mean that we take back the right of the Constitution to create our own money, not give it away to the private Federal Reserve. Again, big subject, but I expect this subject to be stirred up one way or another, especially if Donald Trump pisses off other countries enough. Here is his chart, and here we see most of those Pisces, Aries planets in his 8th house. This is the house of shared resources. This is the house of power over, power under, as I like to say. It's the 8th house, Scorpio house. I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to have the control. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to have power over you. And it's making the squares to his Cancer planets. The first one will be in 2028 when Neptune last quarter squares his Mercury. I think there's going to be a lot of things that'll happen between now and then. One of them is going to be the fact that the transiting nodes that reverse through the zodiac are going to make their squares to his Gemini Sag stellium. Stay tuned. We'll see how that goes. It is quite possible with the transiting nodes reversing through his 7th house that some of those mega people or some of those people that didn't quite pay enough attention to him and what he said he was going to do, they're going to become disillusioned with him. In other words, he's going to have people in other relationships that kind of go, oh God, what did I do? And that Aries energy of Neptune is going to kick in some ways, and they're going to be angry at him. And who knows? Stay tuned. We'll see how they fight back with him. I wanted to show you something. Again, I'm only touching upon some things for you. Some of these slides I could just go into for long periods of time. So thank you for understanding that I skipped through things. Leroy, I did notice the chat pane. If you want to interrupt me, you're more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can. Or otherwise, I'll keep going. Here's Elon Musk's chart. We don't exactly have an exact time. It's not the best rating with the lowest Rodden system, but it's the one that I'm using for now. He has the Pisces Aries planets in his ninth house, and he's going to have the last quarter squares to his sun in 2027. I looked at all this in the ninth house and I go, oh my gosh, here's the ability to lie and spin facts and figures with his doggy and everything that he thinks he's doing to expose fraud, and it just gets exposed for a lie again, 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 again. This guy hasn't even probably come up with tens of millions of dollars of fraud and waste that he's been able to save. I just stay tuned. It's just that, there's going to be all kinds of groups coming out to say, and here's the fact on this agency, and here's the fact on that government's agency. That Aries anger, he's the source of it right now, and he's the direction where people are putting their anger. And I think in some ways, Donald Trump is going to be okay with Elon Musk taking the heat for him. And Donald let him do it until he's not gaining anything from it anymore. Elon Musk has the nodal axis on his Pluto right now as we speak. And so here is the emotional intensity that's going on with the public being angry and the world being angry and refusing to buy Teslas of any kind, and his stock tanking, just tanking. His stockholders getting mad at him. Stay tuned. We shall see how all of this goes, but Donald Trump and Elon Musk have these Cancer planets. Elon has a Cancer ascendant, the best that we know. And, Neptune in Aries through its transit is going to square this stuff. Again, I think things are going to happen a little faster than when Neptune makes squares to some of these aspects, the middle of its cycle. But the energy is there by the squares in a symbiotic way, so to speak. And it's definitely going to be triggered right now by the Venus and Mercury retrogrades as they turn direct and go forward through this spring. I want to talk for a moment about climate change. I ran across this when I was researching 2 years ago, 23, when I did the Great Ingus Decade from a Canadian perspective. And so, again, because Neptune is that totality of consciousness, unconsciousness, we then look at Neptune as being representative not only of source energy, but as I said before, Gaia, our living, breathing earth. So Neptune will relate to the climate, to earth in all of its rawness and all of its change. So Neptune will relate to climate change. And as we've seen through Neptune in Pisces, the destruction that is going on with the melting of the ice caps that won't come back for long periods of time. the way we're going about it, how the sea levels can be rising, but just all of the Earth events can be ruled by Neptune from a broad perspective. And so the public, more and more and more, to the point that it can almost by now be the majority of the public in the United States, we're recognizing the effects of us. Donald Trump thinks we're going to drill, baby, drill, and he thinks we're going to continue with gasoline cars. No, there isn't, it will not happen. These three outer planets are going to create such technological changes going forward for us. I remember being in my 20s and just having this intuitive hit. Someday we're just going to have cars that fly. They have prototypes, but they're louder than bejeebies and they take huge, huge batteries. So we've got a little ways to go. But at some point, we're gonna crack nuclear fusion, nuclear fission, the plutonium, hydrogen bombs that just split everything up. Nuclear fusion goes the opposite way. It's how the sun makes energy. It's how the sun makes its heat. We're going to harness that technology, and we could do it through Pluto and Capricorn and even, Uranus in Gemini. We could do it. And then that changes the whole world energetically. We're going to go in that direction. We just don't know quite how soon. But with these three outer planets in fire and air signs, it's going to increase the forest fires. We had a little one a half hour south of us. I live in the Black Hills of Western South Dakota. I live in a mountain range that driving it by car is an hour wide and 2 hours long. I love it. Don't tell anybody. It's a beautiful place. Okay. But it's small enough, and we'll see what the gutting of the USDA and the Forest Service and all of that does with fighting forest fires across the whole country. But, so far we've been able to stay on top of any of our fires that spring up. 3 years ago, 4 years ago in 21, we did have a forest fire come a half a mile from our house. And I look over a canyon. I could see across to the other side of the canyon. We watched the fire for 3 nights outside our bedroom window. Both cars packed, ready to go. We didn't have to go. So it's been close enough that I'm like, oh boy. So I just think that there's going to be a whole renewed interest with Neptune in Aries of looking at what we're doing to the climate, but then also how are we going to change? How are we going to do things differently? We all have to figure out how to get along. Now, consensus consciousness will go into their territorial battles. You can't come to my country, or you can't cross this border or that border or whatever. And it will also cause us to do a lot of fighting over resources, because as more and more of us are here, we have to share the resources that we have, and we have to find other ways of getting these resources. So I thought I'd show you this map. It took me a little bit to find it, but I thought somebody's going to have a map out there on the internet. Donald Trump's imperialistic tendencies. He wants Canada to be the 51st state. He wants Greenland. He wants the Panama Canal, which is a little red dot down here if you can't see it. Okay. The reason he wants this, you can see this visually from the map. It's control of resources and mineral interests, and it's for strategic defenses. We have a base over here in Greenland, and I don't know where exactly it is, but this is Greenland. And we have a base, a military base over here. And that military base allows us to get a nuclear bomb over to Russia and allows us to get a nuclear bomb over to China if we need to. It is one of the most strategic places for us to be with a military base in order to, fight what we will call our autocratic countries. This was this was known in in administrations before Trump, but there are those who feel that in his autocratic way, he's going to do his own imperialistic tendencies, and he's going to let Putin have Europe, and he's going to have Jinping or whoever he is have all of East Asia and China. And China has really been going into Africa and South America and investing in a lot of building roads and bridges and helping with infrastructure. And of course, it's doing it the same way that the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund did, which was, we'll loan you this money, but then we're going to get all of it back plus interest. And oh, by the way, if we kind of bankrupt you while you're trying to pay us back for these loans, well, then we have a little more control and power over you. So you might hear more of this coming out in the news of this new wave of dividing up the globe. Food for thought. So here was an article in a book that I ran across again 2 years ago that I thought was real interesting. There's this concept called polycrises or polycrisis. And we have a climate change crisis. We have a immigrant crisis. We have all of these things that are going on. Well, this gentleman, which you see right up here on your screen, writing this book, Commanding Hope, Thomas Homer Dixon, okay? This is the snapshot of his book. He says that we have four major areas of polycrisis. Our total human energy consumption. It has increased sixfold since 1950 due to cheap fossil fuels, and we have used 60% of all of the energy in our existence from time beginning as humans since 1950. We also have the Earth's energy balance. Greenhouse gas emissions now trap more energy coming in, that sunlight, than going out. And that trapped energy today, this is 2 years ago, equals 600 Hiroshima bombs going off every day. When we bombed Japan, World War II. And as I was reviewing this from 2 years ago, I'm like, every day? And so here was the article from Vox that recap the book where I'm getting this. And it's like, yeah, every day. And so our whole hydraulic system, that water cycle between the earth and the air, it's supercharged, melting of the glaciers. It is the rising sea levels, more water surface. This is contributing to more extreme storms, floods, droughts, wildflowers, fires, and again, sucking trillions of dollars of wealth out of our global economy. Now they keep track of how many billion-dollar disasters due to weather events do we have in the United States. I can't remember what the figure is, but I want to say last year, 2024, I think it was somewhere between 60 and 80 billion-dollar, not just 1 billion, but at least a billion, maybe it was $20 billion disasters. Think the North Carolina hurricanes that we had last fall. Think of the forest fire that we had in the Los Angeles area. The third one is our human population's total biomass. Our population has quadrupled from 2 to 8 billion since 1925. One third of the carbon in our bodies, you and me alive today, originated from the coal, oil, and natural gas we have burned. Biomass. How much space do you take up? How much, cows are 5% more than us. We're going to overtake cows. Maybe we have this. These figures are 2, 3 years old. Second is humans. Third are krill in the ocean. And the fourth is sheep. So we've got these few species. I don't know if I'd include krill, but at least three of the four that have just overpopulated way more than other species. And of course, the fourth polycrisis is the connectivity of the human population. So things move so fast amongst species and organisms right now. And so nowadays an infectious pathogen travels to the other side of the world, throughout the world, in a matter of weeks. COVID, anybody? And so these are, again, from his perspective, four major areas of a polycrisis. And, I'm looking at this and pondering this through Neptune in Pisces from the perspective of climate change. And I'm like, whoa. And now here we are, Neptune going into Aries. And I think Mama Nature might be a little pissed and may have a little feedback for us and some things to say. In other words, more climate events, an acceleration, Aries, of climate events. Now, here's what Homer Dixon says going forward: cutting those greenhouse gas emissions fast. Somebody please, please make nuclear fusion, Pluto Aquarius, actually feasible. Some say pump sulfur dioxide to reflect more sunlight. I don't know about that one. That might cause a lot more issues. But taxes and regulation that encourage companies to diversify food supplies. We have monocultures, and we have, say, 4 companies that control most of the food in the United States, like 80% of food. I come from the Northern Plains. I'm a farm girl. Think of corn and soybeans and wheat and how conglomerated that is right now and controlling it. The whole local foods movement that needs to happen worldwide. Our whole software ecosystems are ripe for, hacking, crashing. And of course, the whole financial thing, publicbankinginstitute.org. Now, he says we need to be able to have worldwide travel restrictions when necessary to calm down pathogen outbreaks. Again, try and get the world to stop traveling. But he says the problem starts at the top. Those are society elites and their institutions they populate simply don't have the cognitive frame to grasp what's going on. They can improve it, they can make an effort, but they have to really admit that this is happening. And look at this administration of Donald Trump's just in complete denial of, the climate. And again, the whole drill baby drill thing that's going on. So let me just quickly finally look at a few of these aspects for you. Out of these 4 outer planets, again, including Chiron, making 5 different aspects to each other, 3 of them involve Neptune. So those are the 3 I'm going to look at right now. Uranus in Gemini, I'll have a webinar on that come this summer when it's closer to the transit. But here's a visual for you to just kind of show. And again, I don't have these lined up with Aquarius, Aries, Gemini, although I've put them there. Pluto's the slowest moving planet. Evolutionary astrology works with 0 to 360 in the cycle of phases and aspects. It's almost as if the slowest moving planet, wherever it is on the circle, becomes the 0, and you go counterclockwise through signs, houses, or in this case, the 8 phases to the next faster moving planet. And so Neptune is going to be making waxing sextiles to Pluto. Uranus is going to make waxing sextiles to Neptune and waxing trines to Pluto. And here's your dates for you and how many times these happen. This is the overview. Now I'm going to break it down. But before I do that, I put this in, I wanted it to go in a different spot, but here it is. Just in case you're not familiar with conventional versus quantum computing, calculators, binary, 0 or 1 with transistors. We've got those as small as we can make them. Quantum, all of that AI, artificial intelligence that's going on. It's creating devices that are subatomic, and they can hold values of 1, 0, both, or anything in between. Computers work parallel instead of serial. It's that quantum physics light can be both the particle and the wave. Okay, so we now have computers that can process a zillion times faster than the human brain. This is this Pluto and Aquarius artificial intelligence going on. I still put out this book by Dan Brown. It's still a great book to understand AI if you want to. Okay. Uranus in Gemini is going to accelerate all this along with Pluto and Aquarius. And what we've going to have going on here relative to Neptune and Aries is the science versus morality debate. Religion has a tendency, that consensus Saturnian, never as good as yesterday. And spirituality must always be adapting to the evolution of science. I meant to put that in a different place. I didn't catch that. So now we're going to talk about what I mentioned before. Here is the Neptune waxing sextiles to Pluto. They had their last conjunction in the early 1890s at 7 to 9 Gemini. Look at this. This is the elliptical nature of Pluto's orbit. You know, most of the planets go around the solar system like this. Pluto's like this. So it will spend 10 to 30 degrees in a sign in its 248-year cycle. So it creates long time periods where it has lots of aspects, time periods where it has just a few. And so 49 waxing sextiles from 1950 to 1932. Almost all of us on the planet were born with Neptune waxing sextile Pluto. We've had a break since the 1980s of these waxing sextiles, but now we're going to come along and have 13 more, okay, before Neptune moves beyond the sextile. It'll make the quintile aspect. Astrologers will talk about that one. It'll make the squares to Pluto in the 2060s, okay? So we're a little ways away from that. Just wanted to point out how many of these waxing sextiles are going on. Together, this planetary pair is a 500-year cycle of the spiritual evolution of humanity. To me, it's the longest cycle that we can make sense of. I don't work a lot with Eris yet. But so here's the Plutonian desire to merge with whatever gives us the ultimate value and meaning in life, Neptune. We'll do this in all 3 evolutionary states of consciousness. And again, We'll do it with inclusive values and exclusive values. Distortions, those exclusive values, this is where the material world substitutes for the inner values. One more this, one more that. I need, two vacation homes instead of the McMansion, in addition to McMansion that I already live in. The separating forces want to keep us separated. So that's why that desire for this and that and this and that takes lifetimes to actually exhaust, basically. That's that reincarnation from consensus, individuating, and spirituating, creating and releasing, separating desires until eventually the desire to know source is the only desire we have left. Now, that conjunction in the 1890s in Gemini was its original intent was information. It was knowledge-based spirituality. It's curiosity. It's I want to grow, I want to know. And so these waxing sextiles are really part of what is opening us up to want to understand things spiritually with how evolution has been taking place, with how our global consciousness has been expanding and all the changes that have just been taking place in our world. It is about, again, a curiosity for that, because waxing sextiles, the 60-degree crescent yin phase that I showed you, the choices we make during this part, this aspect, has an impact throughout the rest of the planetary cycle together. Positive, negative, separating, returning. That 60-degree choice, ease of effort evolving or ease of resistance. So where will we evolve and where will we devolve? And as we get so many people on the planet and we have so much resources without destroying the planet, I used to use this slide a lot. The US has about 20%, no, excuse me. We have 4% of the world's population, and we use 25% of the world's resources. 4% of the population, 25% of the world's resources. Okay. Out of that 25% of the world's resources the US uses, the upper 10%, the upper crust 10% uses almost half of that 25%. Yeah, those are the upper echelons that, again, the $500 million yacht that Jeff Bezos is going to get married on, so to speak. But for the masses, these waxing sextiles and fire and air, it will reignite that curiosity. It will reignite the information and we'll go, oh, I want that, but we can't all live this way. And so it can create these huge discussions about how we share things, how we balance things, how we're going to evolve as a human consciousness species. Don't have to spend time with this one. My mother was a very spiritual person. She wasn't a super religious person. She raised me on the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Again, remember I said all major religions can have that mystical spiritual side? Here it is for you. You can look at this PDF later. I want to move on. Here is the waxing sextiles that Uranus will make to Neptune. There are 5 of them. So they last had their conjunction in 1993. They had one in 1820 20s, and that was kind of what is loosely called the explosion of the Industrial Revolution. It started before then, 1700s with the steam engine, late 1700s, but that 1820s Uranus Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, Industrial Revolution exploded and caused mass displacement as machines took over the work that humans did. Machines made clothes instead of sewing them ourselves, etc. I called this conjunction in the early 90s the technological revolution. I got my first PC computer in 1995. There were cell phones before that, but there were the big old hunky things. This is when it really took off with computers and then cell phones. As you can see, we're going to have two of these waxing sextiles already this year, one in August, one in November. Then there'll be one in 26, and then there'll be two in 27. So here's that seed thought of Capricorn with this material explosion of everything. So again, there are 170-year cycles of spiritual revolution, Uranus, evolution, Neptune, interface of science, technology, and religion, spirituality. And so it's a continual expansion of thought, Uranus, making sense of it, Neptune. And I also like to say it's that interface of the Piscean age ending and the Aquarian age beginning. The first day of spring recessing through the constellations is finishing up in Pisces after 2100 years, and is starting to go into the constellation of Aquarius for the next 2100 years. And nobody has the exact date in the astrological world, but that transition from Piscean to Aquarian age, give or take, 300-400 years if you want. We're in it. But, we're going to feel both of them going on. And so, as we're looking at these waxing sextiles on an individual basis, the intent is to evolve into who we uniquely and naturally are beyond the societal conditioning factors of Saturn. And I don't know who came up with this, but I love it. Beliefs are conditioned thoughts. Change your thoughts, change your beliefs. That is such a succinct interface of Neptune and Uranus. And so, how can we actualize our individuality from the foundation of our deepest beliefs? How can Neptune's imagination spark our own Uranian genius? So those waxing sextiles, if you think about it, it's for all of us individually, moving into this Aquarian age, moving into this mini renaissance of new thought that we're going to have with these three outer planets in fire and air. All of us are going to be expanding on that in our own individual ways. And then we're all going to be part of the collective doing that as well. So from that collective, countries, all different types of societal religious groups, they're having to evolve their belief systems to keep up with technology. I like to say technology evolving spirituality, spirituality monitoring technology. And what will happen with consensus religions is they want to deny that science. They want to, keep us stuck in the 1950s. That's one of the jokes going around about, Donald Trump going back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because those were his glory days. And so our belief systems always have to evolve as we evolve in consciousness and in manifestation of consciousness in this world. So Uranus is going to just explode technology. And there's always this tendency, remember that 70% of consensus? they are always, you know, having to spiritually and religiously catch up with technology. So, and then there's also that fact of the consensus wanting to ignore the natural laws and principles that we've been talking about here, thinking they still have dominion over nature. There is no climate change, and they're going to have to face that as climate change has, its last word for us. Um, I'm glad I decided to put this in here right here with the Uranus Neptune waxing sextiles. Hold on a second. I want to just go back and point one thing out to you. So we are going to have 4 of the 5 waxing sextiles in Gemini Aries. The one in November will be Taurus Pisces. So 4 out of 5 are moving us forward in that Gemini Aries energy. And so I wanted to just take a moment. I've used these slides before, but the cryptocurrency pros and cons, because I think Uranus in Gemini is going to kind of explode this, both positive and negative. The pros of all of these different types of cryptocurrencies is that you don't need the bank, you don't need the middleman. It allows for some autonomy with money, and it can really reduce fees, even reducing them down to 0. Some of the cons, and this is specifically to Bitcoin, some cryptos are starting to tie their exchange to, say, minerals such as gold or silver, or tie their exchanges to the valuation of the dollar. They don't all operate like Bitcoin does, but they all are mainly to operate on a digital level, not that physical exchange of dollar bills and coins. But one of the biggest cons with Bitcoin is how energy intensive it is. If you do a little bit of research in there, it takes a lot of energy to mine for a Bitcoin. Only so many are made, and once they're all found, then that's all that will exist. At this point, it tends to be pretty volatile as a speculation investment. And if it is something that is taken over by banks or government or financial elites, they have the power to turn it on and off, on and off. So it's really kind of interesting for the concept of regulating cryptocurrencies to come into conversations. If you were one of the very, very early adopters of Bitcoin, you can be set. It can be just doing wonders for you. If you're someone who's thinking of getting into Bitcoin, you probably don't have the cash to even buy one. You have to buy portions of a Bitcoin. So there can sometimes be a tendency for some of these cryptos to act almost like Ponzi schemes. If you get into them in the beginning, I mean, there are tech bros, as they're called, who got into Bitcoin at the beginning, and they're billionaires. And various cryptos have these billionaires, lots of times those, tech bros that created it. They want crypto federal reserves to bail them out. That's the whole point of it. And Donald Trump kind of belongs in that field. He used to be against the cryptocurrencies till he realized, probably through his kids, that he can make money that way. And so that's why he's got those whatever those objects that you create, and it's worth so much money, and you speculate on it. And that's why he's kind of created his own cryptocurrency. I think he has. Um, there's a lot of pro and con going on here, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm a bigger fan of the public banking solution, and that is to turn banking back to a public utility, not the private banks being able to take a dollar and loan it out 10 times and get all the interest from it. It's for public banks to offer services to the masses as a public utility with minimum interest, but the profits going back to the taxpayers and the citizens to take care of infrastructure and universal health care. We are looking at this is an old quote that comes from Ellen Brown's latest book. She's my favorite heroine. Again, publicbankinginstitute.org is what she created. Right now, interest on any infrastructure for a municipality or a county, that interest has went up to almost 50%. It's half of the cost. Now, there's also this movement called a National Infrastructure Bank. The Federal Reserve could, without changing any laws, make long-term zero-interest infrastructure loans to all state and local governments, refinance all the old debts, and pay off the existing interest payments, which again make up half of infrastructure. We have a $6 trillion backlog. You know those bridges? You know that bridge that collapsed a year ago out of Boston? Half of our bridges are in danger of collapsing or being hit with all of the trade that we have going on. And again, if you look at municipal loan bond default rates, less than 1%, corporate bond default rates, 10%. Bailout to our financial sector, if something happens, is 2.5 times the municipal bond market. Every year there is, well, Congress runs biennial. Every other year there are Congress people, representatives and senators that introduce a natural infrastructure bank bill. This is actually how Abraham Lincoln financed the Civil War. He generated the money, it went to goods and services. The goods and services were, guns and whatever. But it went towards goods and services, and it was how he paid off the debt after the war. You can go find out more on this yourself, but these three outer planets in fire and air, and if Donald Trump keeps going like he's going, he's going to upset us and we're going to have stagnation. We could possibly have recession, and it may stir the pot enough that, guess what? We may create some progressive changes. I'm on my soapbox trying to educate everybody. Finishing up here, we're going to have Chiron make 5 semi-sextiles, 30 degrees from the conjunction, one conjunction back at 26 Aquarius. These are a few years away. I'm just going to tell you that Chiron is also very elliptical in its transit. So its planetary pairs with the outer planets vary wildly. But these two, it's spiritual, it's healing our spiritual wounding on the deepest levels. Chiron making those wounds spiritual. And again, patriarchal distortions. We have thousands of years of religious and spiritual distortions on the planet that affect how all of us operate from moment to moment and day to day. And so Chiron Neptune conjunction in Aquarius, that was back at those 2010s, back in that time period. That's when quantum physics really became a buzzword. And, the whole quantum energy took off, and that ability to recognize that we have an etheric body and we could do Reiki, or if we were in consensus religion, we could do what they call the healing touch. That stuff is going to, excuse me, continue to expand between these two as time goes by. That 30-degree mark, waxing 30 degrees, is gestation. It's like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? I've been saying that I've been noticing as I take my elderly mother to her family physician, who has become mine now that I'm on Medicare. I love her because she does not judge our herbs. I don't take any prescriptions. I take herbs. I have for 40 plus years. My mom takes a fair amount of herbs in addition to her prescriptions, but we can converse back and forth with her about them. We can talk about some of the alternative things we do. And again, we converse back and forth. And some of them she says, go for it. Once in a while, she'll say, what's that herb? And what does that herb do? That's what these two planets are going to be all about here. And they're going to start to gain some acceleration, especially when Chiron goes into Taurus. It's going to be there for 7 years, like Uranus was, and it's going to pick up from where Uranus was with the climate events, and it's going to pick up where Uranus was with these physical bodies of ours and how we have got to take care of the immune systems, Neptune, so everything functions. Now, I've included a Jeffrey Wolf Green article on trauma. It's an old article he did from the 1980s. The book is, he did a chapter in a book, and it's out of print, but there's the article that you can go to the PDF and read what he says on that. It is a great article. I'm always telling people the relationship we have with universal source is identical to the relationship we have with ourselves. And the relationship we have with ourselves is identical to the relationship we have with universal source. It is a 24/7 relationship right here. You can practice it all the ways you want to out there, but it starts here and then reflects out there. I have a couple more slides, only 3 more left. Neptune, Saturn, their 34 to 36-year cycle, manifesting form through our state of consciousness. And consciousness creates relative to the environmental conditioning of each incarnation, called our natal astrology chart. And it's different on a collective level from one area of the world to other areas of the world. And consciousness itself is relative to whatever our own individual evolutionary requirements and lessons are. Again, that astrology chart. And over many lifetimes of reincarnation, we expand from consensus to individuated to spirituated states of consciousness. And we learn to get more merging and co-creating with consciousness to form as we expand in consciousness. Even in spirituated state, though, all forms of consciousness will go through these periodic cycles of depression, disillusionment, because Saturn wants to keep the form and resist the crystallization word of Saturn. And Neptune's saying we've got to evolve, we've got to transcend. So we will periodically have that disillusionment that I said with Neptune, cycles of confusion and clarity. And then there will be a rebirth. Well, guess what? We're getting ready to have one of those rebirths. I wanted to point this out for you. We have a few years where Saturn and Neptune are turning stationary retrograde close to each other. And it really can give us opportunities to release, let go. By the way, when they turned retrograde in 24, it was June 29th and July 1st, right in the middle of the first Donald Trump-Joe Biden debate, one and only debate. Any of you depressed after that debate? That was those two planets turning stationary retrograde for the last time in Pisces. This time they're going to turn retrograde in Aries. And this year they'll turn, Neptune turns retrograde July 4th, Saturn turns retrograde July 12th. Sandwiched in between that, Uranus moves into Gemini. That retrograde stationary time period may be a little more explosive than it was last year in 2024. Then we're going to switch to 26, 27. They're going to turn direct within days of each other. So I, I, mm, I think there's going to be a fair amount of just anger that Neptune and Saturn and Aries are going to create because we have consensus leaders that are the most extreme example of exploiting haves and have-beens. And throughout history, when we have such inequality between billionaires and the masses, it has to have a equilibrium. It has to have a rebalancing somehow, some way. And while we may not think of Neptune as always being part of that, Neptune in Aries can be, and Saturn can be. And then they're sandwiched in between, Uranus and Pluto. And so, hold on to your hats and do your best to keep your world just as centered as you possibly can. Yeah. Throughout history, Saturn-Neptune is a planetary pair, has always seen the ebb and flow of democratic versus autocratic principles and countries, communism, democracy, autocratic, democratic, principles of countries. We see that all stirred up right now. We don't know how it's going to shake down over the rest of this decade. We're all going to be co-participating and co-creating with it. And so when you have your letdowns, you just have to do your best to find that inner peace and speak to others as well as you can, as best as you can, to try and help them understand. There will be those that, the prime example, they voted for Donald Trump and they lost their job and their Medicaid got taken away and they can't even make ends meet. They can't feed themselves, let alone their children. There are other examples going on right now. I am talking to an acquaintance that I know that I have ran into a couple of times, and gun ho, big Trumper. And then all of a sudden, her contract with something with Health and Human Services, all of a sudden she got the email with her contract to come up with 5 things that she did that week. And she's like, well, he's my president. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to do it. Yeah, ran into her again. Another conversation. She hasn't lost her job, but her contract's running out. And now she is out there applying for other jobs. Didn't sound quite so enthusiastic about Donald Trump. But I was very careful not to say I told you so. And I was very careful to just kind of go, there's a lot of changes going on right now. And there can be a lot of changes that we need to make in order for all of us to have some basics of healthcare. And I just was quiet, left it at that. So, kind of get what I'm saying. But anyway, I've used this before too. I just think there's going to be some waves of violence. I didn't want to focus on it a lot. I'm hoping that you're seeing some solutions here. But I love this quote. Violence is a method by which the ruthless few can subdue the passive many. Nonviolence is a means by which the active many can overcome the ruthless few. I forgot to take that one out. Neptune, Jupiter. Neptune doesn't have a whole lot of retrograde aspects, or it's Jupiter doesn't have a whole lot of retrograde aspects with Neptune. It has three waxing Susky squares into Gibbous phase, has the opposition you see on your screen. Then it has three waning Susky squares going into disseminating phase with Neptune. And so they'll do their thing. But again, we don't have Jupiter retrograde three times Neptune, three times Neptune. There's not a lot of them. This, of course, is evolving our conscious and unconscious belief systems. And it'll continue to happen. They had that conjunction in Pisces. So there's an intent to really have that merging with Source. But we've got to watch the distortions that come from the whole Piscean energy. I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to stay where I'm at. We've got to make the effort, and this will be happening as we get to the end of the decade. And then they will have a conjunction that'll happen in Aries, and they will be expressing how our belief systems are changing in our world. We have been suppressing and distorting, again, these natural spiritual laws for the last 4 to 8,000 years. It's our inability, as I said before, to recognize consciousness. And so natural laws will always be recognized through nature and stand the test of time. They are knowledge-based. You don't take them on blind belief. Okay? Both natural and human-made belief systems are the foundations that create with Saturn all of this form and rules, laws, taboos, everything we see. So Neptune's going to dissolve any conscious beliefs that Jupiter has that will no longer serve our soul's purpose. We must make that conscious effort on intuitive levels to move forward when the Neptune confusion cycles come through. We also have to be honest with ourselves. So each of us can learn to live in harmony with natural law, regardless of the human-made distortions that are going on the planet. And this is what's going to allow you to have your sense of inner peace as the chaos of the world takes place this decade and beyond, and as Neptune goes through Aries. Exhausted, overwhelmed, knowledge is forewarned, forearmed. It's up to each of us to be in the world what we want to see in the world. If you've never heard me say this one, this is a mantra I made up 30 plus years ago. Spirit of God, Goddess, come through me. Mind of God, Goddess, speak through me. Heart of God, Goddess, love through me. Body of God, Goddess, I am. You're welcome to use it. If you're going to use it publicly, just give me credit for it. All right, I really am down to the last slide. And so here's the rest of the Ingress webinars that I'm going to do through the summer. I will be speaking at NARWAC this year. I'm going to speak on Pluto Aquarius sexuality and cycle of phases aspects. It's sold out live. However, you can attend the conference virtual. You can attend by day. You can attend the whole conference. I don't know if they do individual lectures. I don't have the answer on that one. And then, of course, the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers is going to have their third conference. Save the date. And that's what we've got coming up with that. So, Leroy, if you're still there, I'm going to go to the chat pane and just see if there's any questions that I could answer for everybody. Okay, it
Like just
looks
thank yous,
like.
honey.
All right. Okay. Oh, there's a map. Oh,
Yeah,
that
I
map.
got a map from Antonio.
Yeah.
Antonio,
Uh,
wow, I got
Yeah.
it.
Antonia. Antonia, yes. If you could email that to Leroy and I would love that, honey.
I downloaded it
Oh,
already. We've been
okay.
going back and
Okay. All
forth
right.
on that.
I'm in catch up. Does anybody have any questions that are not on this? You've been very patient, whoever stuck around for 2 hours.
We're
Okay.
good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I wish you all the best and whatever you have to do to calm down your Neptune and Aries anger, may you be successful. And here's to your inner peace. All right. See you next time, everyone. Bye bye.